your favorite athletes that you enjoyed watching when you were growing up, or like when you go to the games and everything, and who you consider your favorites growing up?
Well, for the Lions, definitely Barry Sanders. I've never seen anything like him before or since. My dad was born in 1930, so he grew up through, all the Jim Brown and Gale Sayers, all the greats. Even, I know his name is taboo now, but O.J. Simpson, when he played for the Buffalo Bills, was a great running back. And I asked him one time when I was a kid and we went to the Silverdome to see the Lions, and I asked him if he thought that Barry Sanders was the best running back of all time. And his response was, I don't know, it's hard to say who the best is, but I'll tell you this, I've never seen anyone that can do what Barry Sanders can do. So he was absolutely electrifying to watch every Sunday. There were a lot of seasons where he was basically the only reason to go see the Lions. I loved Alan Trammell and Lou Whitaker for the Detroit Tigers. Obviously, Steve Yzerman was, legendary and my favorite hockey player of all time. And in basketball, and I guess all this kind of dates me because this is all like 80s, early 90s stuff. But, I grew up watching the Bad Boys, and Isaiah Thomas was my guy. Even though they lost to the New York Knicks, his 16 points in the last 90 seconds to force overtime of that playoff game is one of the most amazing things that I've ever seen. And, him scoring 25 points in the fourth quarter of the NBA Finals after he had badly sprained his ankle, that guy gave a lot to the Pistons organization, and he was certainly my favorite Piston.
And it sounds like you enjoy watching a lot of them, and of course Billy Sims comes to mind too for the Detroit Lions. He had a really good career, and unfortunately he had a serious knee injury or two of them that cut short his career. So I remember Billy Sims when we talked about Barry Sanders.
Yeah, Billy Sims was fantastic. Like you said, unfortunately, injuries really limited his career, but we were very fortunate around that era. Barry Sanders came a little bit after Billy Sims' career was cut short, but yeah, Billy Sims was another one who was just absolutely astounding to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that sounds really fantastic as well too. And of course, you got the Detroit Tigers. Baseball season's coming up as well too. And first of all, give us some of your thoughts about the Detroit Tigers' upcoming season, and especially a recap from last year where they performed lower than expected, but finished barely above the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, they're definitely in the midst of a rebuilding. They gave it a shot, and honestly, they should have won at least one of those World Series titles. The Boston ALCS still haunts a lot of Tigers fans, obviously, and their two World Series appearances. But yeah, they had a tremendous team with Verlander and Scherzer, guys like that, Miguel Cabrera, obviously. But now, Cabrera is really basically the only holdover from that team, and obviously injuries at his age have caught up to him a little bit. I think a lot of people around here would like to see him DH instead of playing a lot of first base. But, Cabrera's a gamer. He wants to go out there and play in the field. So we'll see what happens with that. There are some exciting things I think they're doing. They have some, especially if you're a fan of the minor leagues and you watch some Whitecaps games, some Mud Hens games. I think they have a lot of exciting young prospects coming in, and they have some pretty good young players, but they're still some years away. I think they're trying to build up a little bit like your Cubs built up, where they strengthen their farm system as much as they can and bring in some homegrown talent and kind of take that blueprint towards another World Series run.
Mm-hmm. And of course, how long do you think they'll take about in your book? Because most of the teams take about 3 to 5 years, some 7, and some do it in about 2 or so. But how long do you think it'll build the farm system before they start winning ball games again, or even get into the playoffs?
Well, based on what they had before they kind of started building up their farm system, and based on what's there now, I mean, I would say realistically, it's going to be about 5 years, 4 to 5 years before they start to build up a nice core to where they can start making playoffs and compete for World Series championships. That's my feeling on it.
And of course, too, it's also going to be interesting on how a lot of the teams are going to do, especially when they start signing. And we just got word that L.A. Angels outfielder Mike Trout just signed a huge deal. What was it, like 13 years for $400 million? And that broke the record of Bryce Harper signing a deal with the Phillies for 13 years, $330 million? And a month before that, who was it from the Padres? Oh gosh, I can't think of his name. Manny Machado, came from Baltimore to L.A. to San Diego, 10 years, $300 million. So what do you think about those contracts these days?
Well, baseball is the one that's left without a salary cap. So obviously, players are going to try to get what they think they can on the open market. I think that baseball needs to institute some sort of cap. Spending is getting out of control, and unfortunately, it leads to the have and have not situations where large markets that attract a lot of fans and have really good lucrative TV deals are obviously free to sign free agents more readily at those kind of prices than smaller markets are. Like obviously the Oakland A's, are an example, Milwaukee Brewers, things like that. Those teams can every once in a while have some pretty successful seasons, but to maintain it is almost impossible because once their players, they can develop young talent, but once their players get good enough to go somewhere else where they can sign a $400 million deal, then they're going to go there. I think there was speculation that Trout wanted to leave or was going to go to Philadelphia maybe to be with Harper or things like that. I think that he wanted to stay there, and apparently the LA franchise has decided that they want to keep him there, obviously, because they gave him this enormous deal, $36 million a year, I think is what it works out to be, something in that range.
And I think I think Albert Pujols also signed for similar money. Was it $100 million or something like that? It was like 10 years now. It's unprecedented, but yet he wants to still stay in LA as well too. So it's like, how can they handle two players with over $100 million in money as well? It's like, how can they handle two players like that?
Yeah, and Pujols' money is still on the books, so I think it's a couple of years before his salary finally clears from them. The Angels are an interesting baseball team. They're now that they're in LA, they've at the Anaheim area, they're in basically the largest sports market in the world. You could argue New York, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other, really. But they're in an enormous market and they have talent there. But I mean, if I was an Angels fan, I'd be concerned with the way they spend money and how they go about things because, Pujols, was not really able to, they competed and they were good, but he was not really able to win there. And I fear that Mike Trout, who's, probably the best player in baseball and really should be the face of baseball, is going to languish for the next 12 years in a place where it's difficult to win because of decision making, which, is unfortunate. But that would be my worry for him.
And I think personally too, they need to develop more pitching in order to support Pujols and Mike Trout. That they need some pitching. That's been like the sore spot in the Angels rotation for so many years. Of course, they're being like buried somehow, like an American League, like the Chicago White Sox being buried as like a second sister to the Chicago Cubs. And you're talking about the Milwaukee Brewers early as well too. They came within, 1 or 2 games of going to the World Series when the Dodgers beat them out. How do you think Milwaukee is going to do this year? Are they going to repeat the same magic, or are they going to flounder?
See, that's an interesting question. The AL Central as a whole is pretty interesting, and the NL Central on the other side is just as interesting to me. But I think I think that the Brewers have a decent chance to repeat what they did last year, but they got a lot of career years from some guys, and it's hard to repeat that thing. When in baseball, water always seems to find its level. You've got a guy that has a track record as being a 280 hitter. Yeah, he can go out and hit 331 season, but next year you really want to take him more at the 280 level than the 330 level, because the averages really they average out in baseball more than any other sport.
Mm-hmm. And also too, they're looking at more hybrid hitters as well too. No more of the specialists. It's like you have to be one of everything, and pretty much they've raised the bar in a lot of positions in baseball.
No, yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And of course, that's a big question, too. Of course, we'll see what happens when the baseball season rolls around. We'll get to some basketball and hockey as well, too. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at Sonic Web Studios for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking a budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable, custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show is brought to you by Evan Fine of the Senior Reserve Group. When you start thinking about retirement, who do you call about Medicare? Why call the best? Evan Fine of Senior Reserve Group, specializing in Medicare, health, and long-term care insurance. Evan can be reached at 1-800-650-9357. That's 1-800-650-9357. Or email to evanfine@seniorreservegroup.com. Evan is licensed in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Delaware, South Carolina, and Florida. Also, The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can also check on Facebook, facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can also download and listen on SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, and also watch the interview on YouTube as well. We're here with Mark Phillips, the owner of Michigan Sports and Entertainment and host of Massive Late Fee Podcast, and plus a very devoted dad and more. And, of course, we're in the heart of the sports season. We are covered the Lions, and they're at below average last season, looking to improve under Matt Patricia, and also talk about the Detroit Tigers, another rebuilding season, and looking to move up and distance the Chicago White Sox and try and make things interesting. And we're getting into basketball season, as we mentioned, with the NCAA tournament, and also talk about the Detroit Pistons. And, just one question here. We know this is a recorded broadcast, but did you fill out your bracket, and who did you pick to win? Or your Final Four? Let's start off.
Yeah, I've got 3 brackets, actually. We've got one at work. We've got one amongst the owners, and I did that CBS challenge thing. But I think in the one that I feel the most confident in, I have Michigan State actually beating Duke and making it to the Final Four. I think I'm not a Michigan State fan. I'm more of a U of M fan, but I think that something's going on in East Lansing. So I've got them. I actually have them making it to the finals. But I have them beating Duke in their region. I'm trying to think of who else I've got in the other region. I do not have Michigan making the Final Four. There is a possibility that Michigan and Michigan State could face in the Final Four, which would be tremendous for this area. But I just think it's a little bit too hard of a road. Ultimately, I have Gonzaga winning in my bracket. I think that they have a very strong team this year, and that's who my pick is.
It sounds like that people are trying to predict the next big upset. Gonzaga being number one. I've got them my Final Four. What was it, 10 years ago? They're like the upsetters of all time, and they keep getting to the promised land every single time. And of course, Loyola Chicago, where they seeded 13th and made it all the way to the Elite Eight and lost by 9 points or less. And now it's just like everybody's trying to predict who's going to be next Gonzaga. That was 10 years ago. Who's going to be next Loyola Chicago? Who's going to be next Baltimore County, Maryland, in terms of a 16th seed trying to beat a number one? Or who's going to be like a Villanova? It's like, they did it twice where it's like they're seeded, 7th or 8th and won the whole thing? Or it's like, who's going to be the next, Northern Kentucky that got in? Or NDSU Bison that made the first four. It's like, now the question is, which